We are proud to have Remitly on board as our headline sponsors during the IPL this season. When it comes to family, no matter how far away they are, they're always close to our hearts. Perhaps it's why millions of people trust Remitly to send their money worldwide. It's easy to send money quickly, safely, and affordably. And with Remitly's great exchange rates and low fees, more of the money you send reaches the people who matter most. Because at the end of the day, family is everything. Download the Remitly app today and enjoy a special offer on your first transfer.
We're like a little family, aren't we?
In a way, yeah.
Huddled together here against the cold.
We're going to have a nice little day out on Thursday.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
We're going to record the Patreon pod at your house and then go for a net.
Go for a net.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Show your vegetable garden?
It's actually sprouting through. Did I tell you that the other day?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Potato flowers.
Oh, the potato flowers are amazing. But anyway, let's move on because that's twee beyond words. Apologies for that.
Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. We've had a massive week in the Championship, another epic finish. We've had some clues about England selection. We've got Phil as angry as I've ever seen him. We've also got my own personal moan. So Ben is bringing all the cheer on this dreary Tuesday morning. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today are Phil Walker and Ben Gardner. Mark Butcher will be joining us later in the show. A reminder that we've been busy on the old Patreon. We do a weekly post-championship roundup that we record on Monday evening and get out on Monday evening. So if you want instant reaction to the latest action from the championship, get on the Patreon. And remember, we have an additional weekly show on top of that. Last week, Ben and Phil, you did a retrospective on the 2015 Ashes.
Yeah, that was fun actually. I mean, with the sirens of South London in the background and lots of sprinklings of hints at Phil's personal life during the 2015 summer, which we think we might have to give its own episode at some point. That's what the people on the Patreon want.
Yeah, I've got to protect my sources on that one. I'm not sure they'd talk.
Okay, anyway, a really fun round in the Championship this week. Ben, game of the round, undoubtedly up at Chester Street. Warwickshire beating Durham by 1 wicket. Ethan Bamber, the Warwickshire number 10, hitting the winning runs with a 6 down the ground. Ben, the Championship is delivering this season 2 epic finishes in 2 weeks. But also, this was not just a good finish, a really good game from start to finish.
Yeah, and actually, I'd expand the list of epic finishes to more than 2 personally, or 2 epic, several very good finishes, I would say. But yeah, this was brilliant.
And 1 scandal.
Yeah, which we'll get to. Don't worry, Phil. Yeah, this was a very, very good game all the way through. I mean, I felt for Durham, who did most of the running in this game. Ben McKinney made a brilliant 100 first up. Matt Potts, tireless throughout the game, bowled probably the ball of the game in that very last hour to look like he'd won it for Durham, and then that last wicket pair from Warwickshire just hold firm. But he hit 70 in the first innings as well, and then it's Durham who declare, and they look like they've done that they've got the game sewn up when they've got Warwickshire 90 for 5. Bit of partnership. Well, Ed Barnum makes a brilliant 100, ably supported by wicketkeeper Kai Smith. Even then,
who's like an accidental pick this season because Michael Burgess retired surprisingly at the age of 30 last year.
Yeah, exactly. And then even then, you think that they've still kind of got it in the bag. It's 290 odd for 8. The secondary ball's about to come, and then Ethan Bamber shows batting prowess that I don't think we knew he had, and also just an amazing innings I thought from number 11 Vishwa Fernando, Sri Lankan overseas. So you can't really bat averages. I think 9 in first class cricket. The first ball was one of those very typical tail ender sort of jabby defensive shots where you're kind of hurried on it even though it's not that quick. And it basically looks like he's going to get out every ball, apart from the last ball of maybe the third last over of the game, when he just creams this pull shot for 4. And you're like, where has this come from? And it was the same with Ethan Bamber's winning shot. There was so much tension all the way through that last bit. And then he just kind of just stands there and just smashes this amazing 6 down the ground. Doesn't even it's not even like he drops his bat and roars. He just kind of tucks his bat under his arm.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. He's a cool character overall, and this was a brilliant game, brilliant finish. But as you say, a brilliant game all the way through.
Phil, from an England point of view, it's a real statement performance from Ben McKinney. 153 when there wasn't a lot of support from the Durham top order. He ended up putting a lot of runs on with Matt Potts, who at one point was really accidentally hogging the strike. So he was stranded in the 90s for absolutely ages. Do you think England will come calling this summer with McKinney?
Yep, I do.
To a lot of people who may not listen every week, they might not have heard of him. You know, he's not been around for a very long time. He's been on a Lions tour. He only a championship regular starting this season.
Yeah.
It's
You know,
remarkable.
you get these podcasts, these sports podcasts where ITKs, is that what they're called? In the nose?
In the know.
Yeah. I would never profess to be anywhere near that high up in the food chain, but I have heard about him with regards to that first test match. Now, look, don't have my badge. I'm merely spreading more idle gossip, right? I'm not on the record. This is in parenthesis, what I'm saying here, but I have heard that Durham expect him to play that first test match. And look, with good reason. It's almost conventional. This is not an outlandish thing to say. The opposite, really. Standout player, as you say, in the winter for the Lions. Everything about his game screams now. He's tall. He's a front foot player in that he's looking to score all the time. He's a good fielder. He's at ease in himself off the pitch. He's a very kind. You've interviewed him, haven't you? And you say he's a very kind of laid back kind of kid. Pressure is a privilege. That kind of that sort of new way of dealing with it all. Likes his football, likes his golf, clubbable geezer, and is a beautiful batsman. And those runs, look, he averages 41 in first class cricket, opening the batting. That's the equivalent of 70 odd back, way back when. So that's a huge average for now. And okay, small sample size, but just as you had Crawley, understandably rightly brought in on instincts and talent and raw for hitting ability, without necessarily the numbers behind him, and he was brought in early. And on certain days it worked beautifully, and on other days it didn't. But the thinking was very modern. So the thinking would be very modern here with Ben McKinney. But the difference is that he has already a burgeoning body of evidence.
Well, this is the thing. In the same way that people joke about Travis Head uniting a nation in Australia.
That's a good line.
Ben McKinney is in danger of appealing to both sides of the fence in terms of what you're looking for in a New England player, in that he's got all the buzzwords in terms of how he plays the game. He's an attacking opener, but also he's got the old currency of runs. He averages more than 40 in first class cricket.
Yeah, and they'd be picking him for the position in which he bats as well, which is not something
amazing.
that they always do. And, Graham Swan was a coach in that Lions door, and he said, what Phil's saying, he's ready now. I guess that is just the question, though, is that there is, even beyond the guys who kind of have a claim to the first team just by having been in there and done well recently, also with Crawley reasonably recently, but, Pope, Smith, Bethel, Crawley, all of those are kind of fighting out for three spots at the moment. And then you add in Banton, obviously recalled to England in one-day cricket over the summer, started the summer brilliantly. James Rew has started very well and has added another side to his game. Jordan Cox has kind of continued that form from last year. There are so many options. If they are looking for an opener who does that job in county cricket to replace a misfiring player in a sort of a traditional way that you would normally do in a selection sense, you've got a guy who's not made a run for a year, hasn't started the county championship brilliantly, so you look for an opener who fits the mould, it would be McKinney. It's just, it wouldn't be out of the question that they, try and get a bit funky, say, Bethel to open or something, and then fiddle around further down, and then all of a sudden you've got lots of candidates rather than just him as an opener. But yeah, he's a very, very exciting candidate, for sure.
Added element for the first test matches, Bethel might not be available.
That's true,
because it coincides with the IPL.
Yeah, and just on that, one doesn't begrudge it at all, and we know that this is the reality, and we've all accepted that and we understand it. But I wonder if he'll be personally kicking himself a little bit. Has he played at all?
No.
Not played one game. So he's carried the drinks, he's earned some good money, but he's 21-year-old. He's going to earn a lot of good money across the course of his career. How much more useful for his career arc would it have been to be batting three and it would have been three, I reckon. Maybe even opening, but it certainly would have been top 3 or 4 for Warwickshire in tricky conditions, putting himself squarely in the conversation. But as it is now, I'd be very surprised if he's anywhere near that first test squad, because he won't have played any games. And as you say, may even not be available. My guess is that, by the way, the IPL would release him. If England tapped them up, then I would assume that he would be released and that they would cut short that contract. But yeah, as it looks like, he may have to wait his turn.
Possibly, but also the IPL are putting the foot down. And that's the other thing that he's done by entering this year, is that if you haven't been in the auction, then you have more leeway about when you enter the auction for the first time. But say he were to not want to play in the IPL next year, then that's the kind of thing that could then incur a ban. So by playing it this year, or by being in a squad this year, he's sort of tied himself in for the future, unless he wants to risk not playing for a few seasons, which is just a tricky situation.
I'm probably speaking nonsense, but I thought that there was a precedent of a number of players being released who aren't playing in the tournament, being released to play for their national sides towards the back end of the tournament, in a kind of like gentleman's agreement, right, between the BCCI and...
It's not impossible, but they're cracking down on it more and more.
Right,
basically.
okay.
Yeah, and I think various journalists have reported that the ECB have essentially said, if an English player is picked up in the auction, they're available for you for the whole thing. We're not going to call him back for a test match. Might be different with Bethel because he's not playing. So yeah, but I think it is interesting. I feel sorry for him in a way, because the test stuff was really unexpected. Like if you rewind 6 months, he was just talked about as a white ball player, really. You know, you talked about him as a potential test option down the line, but if he was mapping out his next 24 months, Test cricket was probably not on the horizon. And from a personal development point of view, there's a T20 World Cup in that part of the world in less than a year's time. Getting experience in India is probably a good thing.
Yeah, look, I totally hear that, and I don't question the decision that was made at the time. But now, with hindsight, I wonder if he may have thought, oh yeah, this hasn't quite played out ideally, and he might have been better served in the end to have been back here. But it is what it is.
Related to all this is Zak Crawley's run of form at the moment, and we don't need to get into it too much, but I'm sure we'll debate it in the weeks to come. But he's had a really tough few months. So he got a second innings in Kent. He got a second innings 50 in Kent's win over Middlesex, but was dropped on naught. And he's really had a awful run of scores. So since the first test of the Pakistan tour, when he scored 70, he's gone 27-3, 29-2, 0-1, 17-8, 21-5, 12, 27-1, 38-4, 0, 6, 0, 1, 31, 0, 58 brackets dropped on 0. That's 291 runs at 13 over 22 innings. So, yeah, and I do think...
Even including the 58.
Even including the 58. And I think the dynamic is different now that he's 27. I think before you could say, with reason, there are these super strengths that he has. He's got these weaknesses, but he's young. He can work through it and improve as a player. I do think the conversation is different. And also, when he's been having these barren runs before, in 2021, he had a real stinker of a year for England. There weren't exactly loads of options on the sidelines. If you go back to 2021, James Bracey plays 2 test matches, having not done loads for Gloucestershire. Haseeb Hameed basically has a couple of good weeks and is back in the England side, having not scored a run in a few years. It's very different. As you say, Ben, there are actually quite a few guys out the side now who are scoring loads of runs.
Yeah, and with Crawley as well, the tricky thing is it's not just one weakness. There are a few there as well. Like there's the classic thing of an opener. Again, it's the new ball. Can you nick him off? Can you put that driveway? But then also, once he gets through that, actually, if the opposition have a left arm spinner, that looks to be an issue for him too. And he was completely undone by Zafar Gohar in this game. I would just say that if you go back and look at the highlights, there were some of the shots that make you remember why they like Crawley so much. And he does set the tone in this innings for a brilliant chase of 300 and a bit in rapid time. So you can sort of see the benefits of Crawley, but as you say, it comes with when it's been dropped. The hope will be that he, that this form has, switched. I mean, how many times we said this with Crawley, but that this innings can sort of flick a switch and get him back to his best. And if he does get a couple hundred between now and the first test of summer, that can lock his place down. But it's getting to the stage where he does, for once, Crawley might actually need to score some runs to stay in the England team, which has not been the case throughout his career so far, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's a very good shout. He needs a run of form immediately. And he may well produce it, right? I mean, he's the king of the streaks. And he may just now feel a bit more relaxed after that 50-odd and go on one. And then you have to shift the conversation around a little bit. His career is a mystery. It's an enigmatic career. 53 test matches, and he's 100 runs shy of 3,000 runs. and he averages 30.5.
What was the stat from a couple of weeks ago, Ben?
Yeah, so this is the top 9 players to open most often for England in Test cricket. It's Cook, Atherton, Boycott, Gooch, Strauss, Trescothick, Hutton, Hobbs, and then Crawley.
And Crawley's average as an opener is 27.
It's just under 30, yeah.
Oh, okay.
29.59, yeah.
So his career test average is 30.5. Now, in that, there are these famine periods. There is also one outlier.
Two
outliers, yeah. Okay, the 267 and the 189.
189, yeah.
189.
That's the area specialty, Phil.
No, but only in the past.
and also not the second highest score as well.
Yeah, it's true, actually, yeah.
But if you take those two huge series of Australia and India, and he made 900 plus runs across those two series, he made more runs on aggregate than any other England player. So that is not a player who is incapable of scoring Test match runs. And there is the possibility that he is a player who, if you like, adjusts his game to the level that he's playing. There is that possibility. The problem is, as you say, the more these runs of horror form come around, the more you start to conclude that the technical issues that bedevil him from time to time are intractable, unmendable. And the older he gets, the less rope he has. If you like.
The thing for me is he's 27. He's now played 126 first-class games and he averages 31.6. So just looking at it now, Virat Kohli has only played 30 more first-class games than Zak Crawley. He's played so much cricket. Anyway, this is a conversation I'm sure we'll return to. But yeah, you're right to say that he kick-started that Kent run chase. They chased down 316, just 2 down. A very, very eye-catching 100 from Twanda Muyeye.
Who started well, isn't he? He made 70 first day. He's
going to score millions this season. Batting 4 in Div 2. He's opened the batting in Div 1 before. I think 4's his spot. And yeah, he and Ben Compton put on more than 200. Compton scored an unbeaten 100 as well. And continuing the Adam Hollyoak revolution down at Canterbury. Although bad news for Kent, Keith Dudgeon, our favourite from last week, who took 7 for 36, he's now leaving Kent after one game. He's injured his knee, which is a big shame for Kent.
That is a blow. Took 7 for 30, didn't he?
Yeah.
Good week for my fantasy team, just by the way.
We'll get to that, don't worry.
Fine.
There's something I want to get off my chest first around Kent. And this is the nonsense of the 8 points for a draw in the county championship. So if you look at the Division 2 table at the moment, Leicestershire are top, having drawn 1 and won 1. They are ahead of Kent, who've won both of their games. How can this be a thing? Chris on Twitter said, I worked out last week when Warwickshire got 14 points for a draw, that in football terms, this is the equivalent of getting 1.7 points in a game, 1.74 points in a game. It's an absolute nonsense, but a real lack of thinking at the same time as well. A reminder that you can get 19 points for an innings victory in the championship, but get 16 points for a draw in which you come nowhere near winning a game. I don't understand it. What is the point of this? It actually, I think there's a deep unseriousness about the discrepancy there. Like how can you not be top when you've won 2 out of 2 and there's a team that hasn't won both games that's above you?
Yeah, and they had it right a few years ago. They had 5 points for a draw a few years ago and then just changed it without, I don't really know why. Yeah, I think I don't want to make Leicestershire the villains of this. I very enjoyed
it's not their
their
fault.
start
It's
of
not
the
their
season.
fault.
And and they in the game they drew, they made most of the running, made 480 and inside the bonus point cutoff. So and they're doing some fun things, promoting Rian Ahmed to open the batting. They first did it when they were chasing about 50 odd, and then just thought that was
quite fun, wasn't it?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
And then he goes and smashes 77 or 59 in his second innings against Derbyshire. But yeah,
It's all of a piece, yes.
Well, do you wanna give your moan?
No, well, firstly, that trivialises it. Suggests I'm just having a bit of a soapbox kick-off. So I wouldn't call it a moan. I'd call it a plea, an invocation.
Mm-hmm.
So last night we were at the Kia. We were at the Kia Oval, where we used to live, and where they still allow us in from time to time. And you described the scene.
So Surrey and Hampshire have been playing for 4 days. and we're heading towards a very fun finish. Hampshire left a target of 377. It's a slow pitch. Surrey take 3 early wickets. So you turn up on day 4, you think, Surrey, 7 wickets to win. They'll get that done quickly. But Surrey find it hard to create wicket-taking opportunities. And you realise that, hang on, Hampshire got a shot here. If they preserve their wickets, they're going to have a real shot at chasing 100 in the last 15 overs. And that's pretty much where we get to. And then they go off a bad light when, it wasn't that dark.
No. It was much lighter than that. It was much. It hasn't fallen into even that region of potential darkness. There was just some cloud cover.
I agree. And then 2, the other part of it is that it brightened up later. And on day 4, you have different regulations. So
this is a madness.
If it gets a bit dark on day 1, what happens is you can extend the day. So there's not a firm cutoff of when the day ends. For some reason, on day 4, the second you're off, you instantly lose time.
Yeah.
So what happened was they went off with about 10 overs to go. And by the way, they were going off too early on the previous day. So the issue was that a precedent had been set that was that I think to everyone at the ground felt slightly off. The precedent set, and
by which you mean the light meter reading is a certain number. And then they have to hit that number, and it can't exceed it on subsequent days.
Yeah, and on the final day, the second they went off, they started losing overs, which meant that Hampshire's required run rate went from something manageable at about 7 runs and over to something very unlikely at about 11 runs and over. And it's bright enough for them to come on, and then a couple balls into the resumption, they shake hands because I think both teams were fairly content with a draw. But that time lost in the middle, that was only lost because it was the last day and they went off too early for bad light in the first place, deprived us of a very, very good finish.
Yeah, well summed up. That's essentially it. And in Test cricket, the last hour, the 15 overs last hour, must be bowled. And if that means that you're bowling it at 7:15, 7 o'clock, even 7:15, we've seen many Test matches finish in the gloaming. But you get it done. The onus in Test cricket is to ensure that you get as much out of that final day as possible to stretch out the chances of a positive result. It's the opposite on day 4 in the Championship. We must be missing something fundamentally logical here, and hopefully someone can tell us, because it makes no sense to me. What you had yesterday was the distillation of a farce, and as you say, the light may have changed according to the light meter, but to the eye, it was infinitesimally different. It was literally impossible to tell, and yet we went from 6.5, 7 and over with 5 wickets in hand to 10 or 11 and over. They bowled 2 balls and sheepishly shook hands and walked off. This is not anyone's fault, and it's also simultaneously everyone's fault. This is not a dig at the umpires who have the protocols that they must observe. This is not a dig at the players who have recognised when a result is pointless to try and achieve, and every team has the right to shake hands when there is no positive result to be garnered from it. It's not the fault of the players. But the impact on the watching public, and this is the key point, the game can't hide anymore. It can't hide in the shadows, literally can't hide in the shadows of its own eccentricities, and just accept that the game's a bit odd. And that sort of maddening but true cliche, the game doesn't do itself any favours sometimes. Well, we're at a point now where it damn well needs to do itself some favours, because in the past, that scene last night would have happened in the vacuum of the poor sods who were there, having, in many cases, sat through it for 4 days, and the players and the umpires, and that would be that. But now you see it. You see it on screen. You talk about it on social media. You talk about it on podcasts the morning after. There is no hiding place now for the game. And this kind of glaring imbalance risks making the whole thing look, as you like to say, and it's a good line, fundamentally unserious. And it felt like to me last night was that it was, as I say, everyone's fault and no one's fault. It was the distillation of a kind of culture of complacency, right? That continues to bedevil the game too much.
And I think journos are partly to blame for this as well,
Absolutely,
actually, because we're not asking questions enough. If you look at most of the post-game coverage, it's barely mentioned. And if it's mentioned in a matter-of-fact way. There's not enough questioning of it. Like, I cannot stress enough.
It's meant to be elite sport. And it's not when it's presented in that particular way.
There'll be people listening to this, perhaps players, who'd say, well, bad light protocols are there for the safety of players. And that is true. I cannot state enough, as you know, we're people who watched a lot of cricket. It just wasn't dark. It just wasn't that dark.
Yeah.
And you've got to be, basically, I think the emphasis is wrong. It looks like at times everyone involved is looking for the slightest reason to get off the field, rather than doing everything they can to be on it.
Yeah.
And I think, it was a shame, because it was a really good game of cricket on a good pitch.
I would also add, when test matches are shown on Sky TV and so on, then their advanced technology sharpens up the lightness on the pitch and makes it look lighter to the TV or viewer. With the streams, which are more formative at the moment, it's the other way around. And we were working on the streams yesterday, and what the punters would have been watching on their screens looked darker than what we were seeing outside. But that's a kind of a side issue. If you might turn on and you think, hold on, it looks pretty dark to me. And it does actually on screen. It's not in real life. On the issue of safety, it wasn't dark or anything close to it. That's the fundamental point, as you say. And so the dial is wrong. The measurement is fundamentally wrong. B, the pitch was quiet and ankle height. And C, obviously equipment has never been more advanced now to protect players against the rare occasions when they could be susceptible to injury. The problem that I've always had with this is that there is a moral ethical element to it, right? And how dare we sit in this chair and put players' safety at risk? And there's also you've never played the game element to it, which is why I think journalists don't talk about this stuff. But the emptiness ethically of that position has always been borne out time after time after time, because as we know, in the past, when umpires didn't have the overriding call, the decision, Team A would push to stay out there because it suits their chances, while Team B would pretend it's unplayable when knowing full well that the story, the ethics of the matter, will be reversed and therefore totally undermined the following day when Team B is in a more promising position. So what we've been saying for years, protect the players unless we might win, in which case it's all fair game. So the integrity of that position is flimsy completely. But that's just on the issues of the spurious issues of safety, when there are, it was light enough anyway. But if, say, you get to a point where you feel like both teams are looking for a result, okay, and both teams want to stay out there, but it is genuinely getting much past the measurement that they put down, and it is getting dark, but both teams want to stay out there because, say, one team is 8 down and another team needs 15 or 20, and you've got a quick bowler. Now, simply ban the bouncer if you are in that murky period, right? Now, listen, because people will say, well, hold on, that's not fair. What about the integrity of the competition? Well, I would say if you're a fast bowler, you take the trade-off of bowling in what's meant to be dark to just eliminate the bouncer once and over. And if you bowl 2 bouncers, then you're out. 1 bouncer is a no ball, 2 bouncers, you're out the attack. And straight away, it won't happen. And again, people will say, well, what about the integrity of the competition? Well, where's the integrity in what we saw last night?
Well,
where's the integrity in
I think there's a much easier fix. So at the moment, cricket gets very ill when artificial light takes over natural light. Conditions change in cricket all the time.
And that's part of its game.
I don't understand why the floodlights taking over is a red light. I don't understand it. You've literally got floodlights to make it bright enough for people to see it. I know people say maybe the red ball doesn't
Well, use a freaking pink one then, like they do in actual international cricket.
And also you have ball changes all the time during innings. You know, in that Surrey-Hampshire game, there must have been at least a ball change per innings.
Like, look,
why can't you do a ball change for the bit when it gets a little bit darker?
Have 8 pink balls in a room with 10 overs, 20, 30, 40 written on each of them, and you pick the one that is the clearest comparison to the ball that you have to remove because it's got a tiny bit dark. Not even dark, murky, and slightly overcast.
And if people say, well, the balls are different, that's not fair. Well, you literally had an Ashes decider decided by a ball change 2 years ago. So there's precedent for balls being important and changing things.
Are we admitting that it decided it now? 2 years on?
It did, didn't it? Yeah, it's long enough ago.
But yeah, I mean, loads of good ideas. And the fundamental thing is, as Yas says, that they're looking for excuses to get off rather than stay on. And also there's just not enough of this creativity happening sort of in the thinking behind the regulations or behind how it's set up, that like any or all of these ideas could work. And there's not an impetus to try and change it. I mean, although I just don't want to be deprived of Chris Wokes bowling like 5 balls of spin in a test match, which was a highlight of last summer. But
yeah, I do appreciate that the future of democracy itself is on the line at the moment, and so I'm aware.
This is the big one, Phil.
Our tendency
this is the big one, Phil.
To niche within a niche within a niche is really, really problematic at this particular occasion. Yeah, so I was angry last night, and I was genuinely angry, and we'd worked on the game for 4 days, and I genuinely care about this stuff, as in what happens here and into the future. I'd also add, by the way, I went to see Tim Key do a podcast last night, mate of the show and all that, and I turned up early, and my mate's girlfriend, who's Danish, who I've only met once before, was there. And she said she made the mistake of saying, "How was your day?" So when the boy did walk in, I'd given her 10 minutes on the nuances of the bad light rule, and what it tells us about English life and the game and the decisions I've made in my life. So I'm aware that it's absurd on a certain level. I'm aware of that. I'm also feeling a bit better about life this morning. Like you've had a big row with your lover the night before, and it feels like it's the end. And then you wake up and you realise there's actually 2 sides to every story and whatnot. Okay. Yeah. Nonetheless, I have actually, on the train coming in here, drawn up a new charter for the whole game. The definition of the back of a fag packet charter, this one, like in effect a social contract, right? That I want all parties to sign. I want the PCA to sign it on behalf of the players. I want the committee of county chairs to be on board, charity heads, school secretaries, umpires associations.
We'll sign it.
Yeah.
The ECB, I'm writing it. I'm calling it, I've already got a name with a nod to Obama. I'm calling it the audacity of altruism. Let me get that right. The audacity of altruism. Okay? What I'm asking for is I've written it down. We need some kind of music behind this.
Yeah. Dan, do you imagine?
Rule Britannia or something, I don't know. A fresh commitment to prioritise growth, expand audiences and deepen participation, to recognise that this is the entertainment business, Yazine. And we're all in its service, just passing through. We need to recognise that the game is in a war for eyeballs and a war for talent. And I don't think for a second that the majority of people involved in our game have the slightest understanding of the reality of the picture below the professional game. The future of the game is at stake right now because we have, by accident or design, reached a generational moment. We've secured the short-term futures of every county. And if those counties are smart, they'll use this windfall that's come in on the back of the 100 to strengthen their foundations with a capital F. Their actual charitable foundations and the foundations that go out and deal with local communities and so on and so on. Deepen the connectivity with schools, with clubs, with local education schemes. You know, I've been writing quite a lot about this of late.
I'm aware.
Not squandering it on a few player bonuses and the odd over-expensive overseas or a kind of immediate capital project, which could fall into vanity projects, arguably. But to recognise that we're in this for the long haul and that fundamentally there needs to be a shift in people's attitudes towards what this game is. This game is an entertainment. This game is a beautiful thing. And it has to make a play for the future. What we saw yesterday was a game still stuck in its own self-worth, own self-importance, and its own complacency.
I do sometimes wonder, similar to your situation last night, when somebody asks you at the end of the week, "How's your week?" and you're like, and you explain that, well, there's this thing around bad light, and then someone just looks at you, it's like, what is your life?
The beauty of it last night, though, is that Maria, this Danish woman, is going out with Jeffers, and he wants to be a cricket writer. So there you go. So it's all fine.
I think we should move on.
Really?
It's worth mentioning from that game, Dom Sibley hit 200s in the game.
It was a really good game of cricket.
He carried his bat in the first innings. Only Jeffrey Boycott has carried their bat more often than Sibley since the war in county championship cricket.
In all first-class cricket, actually.
All first-class cricket.
The great openers across the world, Sibley is the second best at carrying his bat in that time, and could overtake him by the time he's done. And where would Surrey be without him after a slightly stumbling start to the season, which has only got into the gear, kind of thanks to him, I guess.
Yeah, and look, in the tiniest of brackets, the McKinney conversation, the Crawley conversation, we had a look, didn't we? He's 29 and a half, is Dom Sibley, and he's playing better cricket than ever. His game is more complete than ever, but notably so. There's a new economy to his technique, none of the kind of the extraneous idiosyncrasies that were there before.
Yeah, much more conventional.
Looks like a very, very, very fine player indeed. Yeah. And stranger things have happened.
You're allowed to get better after you've played for England. And he was only 25 when he played his last Test match for England. And he's in the form of his life at the moment. Elsewhere in Division 1, Sussex got their first Division 1 win in 10 years, thrashing Somerset at Hove. It was a great week for Sean Hunt, the young left-arm seamer. He took 9 wickets in the game. Somerset, without Craig Overton and without Matt Henry, who's not going to be at Taunton possibly for quite a long time, maybe if at all. His shoulder recovery is not going hugely smoothly. There was an update last week from Somerset, and they're not sure when he will arrive. But yeah, really good win for Sussex. Tom Haynes scored 100. John Simpson scored his second 100 of the season. And Somerset, after not getting over the line against Worcestershire last week, now losing to newly promoted Sussex this week, they have not started the season well. Elsewhere in Division 1, there's a draw between Notts and Essex at Trent Bridge. Carl Verena and Jack Haynes scoring hundreds. Essex briefly had a sniff on the fourth morning, but a 77-run ninth wicket stand between Jack Haynes and Brett Hutton extinguished any realistic hopes of a result.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of lower order runs, isn't there? Number 9s, number 8s making big runs. And again, it's a sign, as you say, of just how unresponsive pitches are at the moment. And we saw at the Oval, it's always got good life in it. And even that pitch, which is pound for pound one of the best in the country, even that was docile as all hell by the end of it.
The other game in Division 1.
Just about, yeah.
Good, yeah.
Well, the historic game in Division 1 that Ben is very excited by, Yorkshire beat Worcestershire by 504 runs, which is the biggest ever win by runs in county championship history. Dal Milan scored 98 in the first innings for Yorkshire. Don Best scored 100 as a night watchman in the second innings. There was a fourfer in the second innings for George Hill. Joshua Schofield on the Patreon asks, what are the panel's thoughts on George Hill at Yorkshire? And do they think he has the potential to be an international player? He averages 33 with the bat and gets better all the time. Currently averages 24 with the ball and barely ever goes for runs. Yorkshire fans are very excited by him. What do you think his ceiling is, Ben?
Look, he's a very good player, and I don't want to do him down. And I don't think this is doing him down, because I think this is a very high level that he can get to, because I think he can be like one of the best all-rounders in the county game. I wonder, looking at him, if he will have exactly what England are looking for at any point. I mean, he's tall, he's got that going for him. I'm not sure if the pace is... It's tricky. If you want an all-rounder in international cricket, they tend to want guys who just can bowl at that kind of at least 83, I guess, even if you are, at a pace which makes you very, very effective in the county game, which he clearly has. They tend to not go for those guys, even if he can get his bat. Like, it feels like it's going to have to be more on his batting. And actually, I look at him more as the bowling is the strength in county cricket at the moment. But you look, there's loads like, he's already played for England in under-19s, captained the under-19s. So they clearly have seen him and liked him at that stage. And yeah, there's the height. He attacks the stumps well. I like him, but I don't know if I see that England will come calling at any point. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You have lots of these cricketers who become sort of titans of the county game. The sort of the Ed Barnard, Ryan Higgins sort of mould, who are these, legends at their clubs, I think he can be a brilliant Yorkshire player, basically.
Elsewhere in Division 2, there was a draw between Glamorgan and Gloucester. Charlie on the Patreon channel points out that following on from our chat the other week about draws in Division 2, Gloucester have won one game at home since 2021. That's bleak.
Yeah.
There was a draw, as we mentioned earlier on, for Leicestershire, top of the table, Leicestershire against Derbyshire. At one point, they were in a very strong position, but Martin Anderson for Derbyshire scored 100. Derbyshire were 139 for 6, responding to 484. They were eventually set 440-ish, but that game petered out quite quickly. And then Calvin Harrison, your man, Calvin Harrison, took 11 in the game for Northants, on loan at Northants from Notts against Lancashire. Northants on top, but couldn't quite force the victory on the final day.
Yeah, and did it economically as well. Bowled an immense amount of overs, bowling wrist spin. And I was feeling quite cocky yesterday because I did call him out, didn't I? I called him on one of the early shows.
Yeah, he's one of the 50 people you reeled off as a potential 1-to-1.
6, actually. There's lots of them out there. You can't just say 1 or 2. Yeah, he's behind the boy Ahmed. He's behind Farhan Akulset at Notts. With good reason, I suppose, but Notts have recognised that he's got something that they like, and so they've shifted him out to Northants on a short-term loan, and he was, he was the star of that show, and it's a very, very significant moment for him. As I say, I like him a lot. He's more of a white ball cricketer by reputation. He's a really, really good fielder, and he can bat a bit as well, and he's one to watch, I think.
And that was the game that was almost a brilliant finish. I mean, Lancashire 9 down at the end, battered out, 6 overs at the end, Turner and Bailey. If that last wicket falls at that point, then they have kind of, 7 overs to thrash at 10 and over, basically, and then don't get the chance to do that. But yeah, I mean, just overall in the county championship as well, like the teams at the top and the bottom of the tables are not what you would have expected. I mean, you wouldn't have had, Sussex with more wins than Essex, Surrey and Somerset combined after 2 rounds. And Div 1 almost an inversion of what you would expect at the start of the season, with the exception of Worcestershire, who I guess we maybe think are still going to struggle.
I'd say that it's pretty compact though. From Somerset in 8th to Warwickshire in 1st, that's one result separating. There's only 16 points between them. So yeah, I think on the Surrey Hampshire game, part of I think how the events unfolded was 2 teams were pretty comfortable with a draw, and I understand that from Surrey. Less so from Hampshire, who I think have an outside shot at best of winning the whole thing. And this is an opportunity to get a win over the most likely title winners. That's it for part 1. In part 2, Mark Butcher on why batting is maybe easier for taller batters and why fast bowling is a particularly thankless task in the county championship. Butch, let's start with a question from Dan on Ben McKinney, who's the talk of the town at the moment. Dan asks, when people mention McKinney, they often mention his height, Durham's 6'7" opener, etc., etc. It's totally valid. It's a point of interest and it's something that stands out. But my question is basically a technical curiosity. How exactly does being exceptionally tall help or hinder someone's batting? Thank you.
It's a good question. Being at the shorter end of, well, I suppose the shorter end of 5'11" myself, I wouldn't have too much practical experience of being a very tall batter. But I guess that there are lots of facets, really. One of them is that it's just very rare. Kids playing cricket, generally the taller ones, they get a ball shoved in their hand early. It tends to be that physical attribute is more looked at as far as bowling is concerned. But in terms of attributes to be a good batter, i.e. good balance, good hand-eye coordination, concentration, they're all things that are not solely the to the benefit of people who are shorter. It's just simply a case, I suppose, that being that little bit taller, being perhaps slightly less quick on your feet as a general rule, makes it something that is not taken up to that sort of extent or to that sort of skill level by taller guys. So it doesn't mean it's impossible. Obviously, you think of somebody like Matthew Hayden, who was, very much on the taller end of the opening batters spectrum, particularly when you consider that he played a lot of his matches with Justin Langer at the other end. He and Graham Smith, I suppose, two big left-handed opening batters, were great examples of players who could use that sort of height to be very dominant against the quicks, against the new ball as opening batters. And why was that? Well, presumably, again, not talking from practical experience, but presumably, if you think of it in terms of actually you're going towards the bowler. I mean, a lot of shorter players will go back and across a little bit. Not a great deal of sort of like forward momentum, perhaps across the board. But if you're using your height in order to be sort of dominating to make sort of like a back of a length delivery, even something that you can play off the front foot, and then you're very good on the pull shot by pulling off the front foot. Somebody like Mike Proctor is another example of a taller player who would do a similar sort of thing. Then it gives you an advantage in terms of making it very difficult for bowlers to find a really good challenging length to you, because clearly if you're able to go forward to deliveries that a lot of guys would find in the half and half sort of length, and then pull anything that's shorter than that, then you've got a bit of a problem. And obviously you're not looking to bowl too many half volleys at these big guys who could drill you back down the ground. So I mean, those are the things that are advantageous. The things that are not advantageous, I suppose, are if you're not the sort of character or player who's going to be very much sort of on the front foot going at the bowler, and you're kind of hanging back a little bit, then picking length can be very, very difficult. Which is why you would imagine all the guys who've been very successful who are taller than sort of 6'2" or whatever have been guys who are very, very keen to sort of dominate from a forward position, as opposed to sort of the more traditional play from the crease, go back and across type technique.
It's part of the theory that the higher the level, the faster the game, and the more it bounces. And if you're taller, you're less likely to fall in the way that a lot of English players do, particularly down under with the extra bounce. A lot of English players sort of are outdone, fending outside off stump and outdone by balls that just bounce a little bit more than you expect. And if you're taller, you can get on top of the bounce a bit more. Possibly,
yeah. I mean, but it also gives you the same issue, a difficulty on that score, whereby you're trying to play at deliveries that shorter players that might drop their hand underneath and let go by. Cut shot, for example, is another thing that a lot of players who are sort of slightly shorter in stature will play better than taller players. So look, it swings and roundabouts. I think Graham Smith is always an example I use of this, whether you're talking about height or whether you're talking about anything really, and that is whatever you do naturally, your natural attributes, you have to be mentally strong enough in order to stay within the remit of what they allow you to do, and not to get sort of sucked into doing something outside of what your physical, whether it be your grip or whether it be your height, you're trying to make things easy for yourself given the physical attributes that you have, and not go outside of that. And so there really isn't any reason why tall players shouldn't be successful. It just becomes more, there are less of them, so it really stands out when they're ones that are very successful. And number two, the idea, because you have to be sort of physically want to be very imposing, and it takes quite a lot of bravery to kind of be driving yourself forward at quick bowlers bowling at your head. And so therefore those two things are very, very important. If you have them, there's no reason why you shouldn't be successful.
I'm going to ask you about fast bowling in the Championship. One of the standout players in the round just gone was Sonny Baker, who I know many of our listeners are big fans of. He took an eye-catching 5 foot against Surrey over the weekend at the Oval, but he was also quite expensive, going at over 5 runs and over in the second innings. Over the last couple of years, Butch, we've seen some quicks get picked for England and do very well for England despite not doing great in domestic cricket. Josh Tongue was averaging 45 in the Championship when he was picked 2 years ago. Bryden Cast averages 30 for Durham. How reliable an indicator for success at Test level is Championship form for the quicker guys? And if it's not that reliable, why is it not very reliable?
I don't think it ever has been, If you go all the way back to Go all the way back to 1971, for example, when Bob Willis was sort of picked out of obscurity to go on an Ashes tour. You look at the records of guys like John Snow before him, and the difference between his numbers in 3-day county championship cricket as it was then and his test match career. There's always been quite a large disparity, particularly for the quicker bowler. So it's not just something that's happened in the last 10 years or so, although maybe it sort of seems like it, simply because of the way that hardly anybody who's got good records in county cricket over the last 3 or 4 years has got a shout. It's always been sort of slightly outside of that. So maybe it seems as though it's happening more often, but I think it's always happened. Reasons behind it. Well, start with pitches always. Slightly less bounce, slightly softer pitches, a style of cricket whereby you're playing so many games that bowling at your optimum sort of pace is not always either possible or desirable. The quality of the bowlers around you sometimes, or the roles that you're asked to play in sort of championship cricket can be very different. In a test match, if you're a high pace bowler, generally speaking, you're surrounded by 2 or 3 other high quality seamers that can keep the game quiet for you. And so a captain can afford to allow you to be very, very attacking and not worry about whether you go for too many runs. Whereas in the championship, the captains tend to really want to kind of keep control of that scoring rate. And therefore, fast bowlers like sort of wrist spinners, for example, become something of a luxury in a team if you're trying to sort of play in a style of cricket which puts attrition and keeping scoring rates down as a premium. Bounce is another thing. Why have England for a long time been looking for guys of high pace to play overseas, test matches overseas in Australia and in South Africa? It's simply because your lower pace bowlers, your 78 to 82, 83 miles an hour bowlers who are relying on the ball, perhaps staying on the surface a little bit longer, getting a little bit of nip sideways, etc., that style of bowling just does not work. It's not really very useful unless you're one in 1,000 like Vernon Philander or somebody like that, who had was incredibly strong, didn't bowl very quickly, but was very, very strong, was able to drive the ball into a pitch on a full length and make it do something. That style of bowling has not traditionally been very successful. You're not making the ball swing very much outside of the first 5-10 overs, and so you need to be able to hit the pitch harder and bowl quicker. So all of these factors are as to why the game is just slightly different at Test match level than it is at county level, and so therefore, and I remember back in the 90s, England had the same sort of obsession with trying to find bowlers who were not. Your guys who were taking 60 to 70 wickets in the championship every year, but looking for people who had that extra pace and bounce and might be able to get top batsmen out on pitches when the ball wasn't swinging and seaming. So this has always been a challenge for English cricket, simply because the way that our style of cricket and the pitches that we play on are very different to the style of cricket played pretty much everywhere else in the world.
Well, I think a couple of the best examples for it working well for England is during your career, right? When Harmison, I think he's first picked in a squad in 2000 for that home summer against Zimbabwe and West Indies, and Harmison at that point wouldn't have had much of a county record, and similarly a couple of years later when he actually played Test cricket, but also Simon Jones as well. Those are two guys who formed half of that.
I'm glad you brought those guys up, because those are exactly the two examples that I was going to use. Just a completely different proposition in Test match cricket than they were in the county game, albeit that Steve and Simon were both relatively unpleasant to play against in county cricket, but it just went up a notch in Test matches.
And is that pitches though? Because I think sometimes one thing that might have changed a little bit over the last couple of years is that such a high percentage of the season happens before the end of May, and I've watched quite a lot of the early 2 rounds of the championship, and it's so slow, the pitches. There's no pace and bounce, and if you use an international example of Mark Wood, right? Mark Wood for a long time was much more effective overseas in places like South Africa and Australia compared to what he was in home conditions, even in the heart of the English summer. And I think part of the reason for that is that our pitches are just a little bit slower than they are elsewhere in the world. And that is exaggerated in the early season. So someone who might be very quick and a handful on a faster pitch, come early April, it sits up quite nicely. And to better players in particular, it becomes quite a nice pace to face.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly it. And put in the other side of things, whereby even when the majority of games weren't being played before the end of May, you then had the issue with, how many games would those guys have played, and by the time the pitches did get that bit harder, second half of July, August, how fit were they? There was they bowled a lot of overs in that period of time over lots of different formats of cricket, and wouldn't always be at their fittest and freshest come then. It's no, I don't think it's any sort of coincidence to me that sort of guys like say Glenn McGrath, for example, he played, I don't know, 25 games for New South Wales, if that many, and so all of his best overs were playing for Australia. There was never really any issue with him being knackered coming into a Test match series. And so all of these considerations for fast bowlers are always there. But I think going back to the original premise, you still need your high quality seam bowlers. You still need your James Andersons and your Glenn McGraths, for that matter, who wasn't express pace. But in a Test match lineup, say where you've either got 3 or 4 seamers, one of them is high quality between 80 and 85. You've got another couple who are sort of pushing a little bit further than that, and then you've got your one outstanding, in terms of pace, high velocity quick bowler. Suddenly the overs of that guy bowls are when it's optimum for him to be bowling, and when a captain feels it's his time to really have an attacking go at the opposition. And then they can be taken out of the attack and replaced by the steadier guys who are going to keep things tight for them. And quite a lot of the time in county cricket, you just don't have that luxury. And and teams on slower, lower bouncing pitches can find that's a great opportunity for the batting side to actually go on the attack as opposed to the other way around in the Test match game.
And the final point I'd make, that probably you won't know unless you're a bit of a county diehard and watch county games in person a lot, is just how small some of the boundaries are. Even at some of the bigger grounds, you got somebody bowling 90 miles per hour, but it's a club-sized boundary. That must be so hard to defend for the quicker guys.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, a lot of the time, I mean, if you mentioned Sonny Baker, you look at the wickets that he took in the match against Surrey at the Oval. So you're cleaning up the tail, which is absolutely invaluable, particularly in Test matches, because, those 100 run partnerships or those 100 run scores between the last 2 or 3 wickets can absolutely kill you in a Test match, as they do in 4-day cricket. So, you're going nose and toes a little bit, but if you're doing nose and toes and you've got a 40-yard boundary to the one side and guys just keep top edging you for 6, it kind of, the whole plan can be very, very costly for you. So yeah, I mean, there are an enormous amount of factors, but I do think, and I go back to what I said at the very, very beginning, that this has been something that England selectors have had to do, have needed to do, and have actually done for the last 30 odd years. That they're always looking for something just slightly different, slightly more usable for conditions that are not English conditions in county pitches in April, May, June. And they've always had to do it. And that's why sometimes you get these, it seems like these wild card selections just pop out of nowhere. But actually, there's always been a sort of method in the madness. Don't always get it right. I mean, sometimes the guys are quick, but they might not ever have the skill and requisite control that you need, because you still need those things as a fast bowler. But quite often they've done a good job and managed to pull guys out, restrict their workloads a little bit, get them under the sort of central control of things, and turn them into high quality performers who just give you that little bit extra for conditions that are requiring of that little bit extra.
Well, we've mentioned a couple of exciting young guns. It'll be interesting to see how they go over the next few weeks. Enjoy Pakistan, Butch, and see you next week.
Yep. Speak to you from I'll probably be in Multan.
Phil, you want to say something about the magazine?
Yeah, just briefly, if you like the print magazine, if you like to feel it in your hands, then you can go use the code WCMFree25, WCMFree25 to subscribe to the magazine on a monthly basis. And you get your first one for free. After that, it works out as £3.67 per month, which is a joke value figure, really. To go to it, and it will be put in the show notes. So I don't want to read out this long, nasty link, but yeah, /press. And then we'll put the rest of it in the show notes. So go there. All you just got to do is click on that link, put that code in, WCM325, and you get your first one for free. And sorry, very quickly, if you want your digital offer, if you prefer it now to read on an iPad or your phone or your laptop or whatever, then £8 gets you 6 issues. £8 for 6 issues. It's a wildness. It really is. And that particular offer on the digital version, 100 pages, YouTube videos embedded in there, a few audio reads from me and Joe, and so on and so on. That offer runs out on May the 7th. So 3 weeks from now. Get it for the summer. It's going to be a huge one. And this is the finest magazine known to humanity.
Ben, the IPL has been going on. We're about halfway through the group stage. Quite a fun week. MS Dhoni, heard of him? He's captaining again at CSK. Abhishek Sharma scored 141 off 55 as Sunrisers chased down 246. Nicholas Pooran is scoring loads of runs, and Delhi are going very well. Let's start with Delhi. Can't really work out when I look at their team why they're doing so well at the moment. Why are they doing so well?
Well, KL Rahul has rediscovered what it means to bat in T20 cricket, which there was a time when he was, one of the best players in the IPL, and then a time when he was overly fixated on sort of being not out on the end. There's an infamous quote that he said, strike rate is overrated. He wanted to be the man for his team. He was kind of eschewing all risk. And now he says that 6 is the most important thing in the game and is batting like it. So he's a big part of it. If he can be your best player, then that is very good. They've got a new leg spinning all-rounder, Vipram Nigaj, who's very good. And if you can just find an uncapped sort of gem like that can really sort of transform your fortunes. Kuldeep Yadav is still maybe the best white ball spinner in the world. Mitchell Stark is doing good things. Took a 5 early in the competition. And they've also, he's played one game and they lost it, but Karen Nair has continued this extraordinary renaissance in his first IPL game for about 6 years, or he made his first 50 in over 2,500 days in the IPL. So quickly on his story, the end of 2022, he tweets, "Dear cricket, give me one more chance." So he was at Karnataka, he was being left out of his stateside in all 3 formats, moves to Vidarbha, and basically since then has scored runs every single time he's batted.
And Wantage Road?
Yes, and at Wantage Road as well. Yeah, so he averaged 389.5 in the domestic 50 over competition, which they got to the final. Made 100 in the Ranji Trophy final, which they won, so has made loads of first-class runs, and then goes and against Mumbai Indians, hits 89 or 40, including hitting Bumrah for 2 sixes and over, which is the first time that's happened in about 5 years or something. And he even got Bumrah a bit angry, which no one ever does. He's the coolest man in cricket. So, yeah, and the thing is they're still kind of figuring out their best team. They had Faf du Plessis opening. Now it's KL Rahul opening. They interestingly only now have got just the 3 overseas players, and actually them and Gujarat Titans, the 2 top teams in the league, neither of them using their full overseas quota, which is an interesting little subplot, especially when you think about, Indian dominance overall, that actually they've outgrown almost having players from outside of India, basically.
It's almost as if you have to be quite good to score a test match triple 100.
Yes. Yeah.
Pooran, why has he gone up another level? 357 runs at 59, 450s in 7 games, and a totally ludicrous strike rate of 207. He's always been good. Why is he so good at the moment? He
would say himself, "I've just got amazing natural talent." That's what he said. That's what he said in an interview. Might have been on Cricket Info, but certainly where I read it. He said, "Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because I am extremely naturally talented."
But he's always been naturally talented, and he's doing even better than he has done in the past.
Yeah, but I do wonder if it is that, because he has been very good for a few years. He is now unquestionably the best in the world, but I do wonder if it is just he is an extremely talented player who is in the form of his life base. So there is an element of form to it. Also, just when you look at him, there isn't any way you can bolt him or anything you can bolt him. Like almost every T20 player, there is kind of, you could build sort of like a strengths and weaknesses sort of profile for them. Pooran just doesn't seem to have that. Like there isn't a type of bowling or an area you can bowl to him that he doesn't have an option to hit it for 6. He's got this amazing shot over like deep square leg of the balls that are on leg stump that he can hit for 6 there, which not loads of players have. And so I kind of agree with Phil that, it's a combination of confidence and talent and, a player that has kind of always been very talented and is now kind of just in his prime, being the best player in the world, basically.
I just like a player who comes out and says, I'm blessed with unbelievable natural ability. You said it, son. I've made my peace with it as well, the broader story. If he can energise a few kids in the West Indies to pick up a bat because you can become the best in the world, then if he doesn't wear the whites, I can just about live with that. What a story it would be if one day he did say, do you know what, chaps? I'll actually recognise where it all began and the origins of all of this fame and fortune and brilliance. And I might even turn out for you in bat 5 somewhere or other.
He would be so good at 5, wouldn't he? He'd be so good at 5.
Yeah. But I've made my peace with it. He's doing a good thing for West Indies cricket. No doubt about it. And he's unbelievable to watch. As indeed is Rahane, who's become my favourite IPL player. I'm serious. He's incredible. Literally can't remember what team he plays for. He used to play for CSK. Now he's gone to another one, and he bats 3 for them.
KKR.
Thank you. I knew it was one of the darker kits, the purple kit. Yeah, and he can't quite shake the old world, even though he's matching players in the new. And I saw him hit a 70 odd and about 30 balls, and it was just remarkable, really. He hits it so far, considering he's a tiny little lad. And yeah, just another reminder of just how many amazing cricketers they have produced over the last 15, 20 years. Karen Nair is a really good example. You imagine what English cricket, how strong English cricket would be if you can just ignore a player who made a Test match 100 a few years ago and doesn't even play for his club team.
Some sad news this week. The talented Aussie top order bat Will Bukowski has retired at the age of 27, saying he does not want to risk doing any more damage to his brain after repeated concussions. Bukowski has suffered at least 12 known concussions over the course of his career. He played 1 Test match against India in 2021, scoring a 50. Highly regarded player, tipped for the top from a really young age. It's obviously been a story for quite a long time, his battles with concussion, but still sad nonetheless when this news came through.
He has been offered a job as, I think, one of the key head coaches at his association. So at least he'll be staying in the game. But yeah, it's an awful story, that one. Yeah.
In the PSL, there have been some standout performances from the English contingent. There was a century from James Vince and a 19-ball 50 from Sam Billings. Both very eye-catching knocks. That Vince ton particularly so. 101 of 43 as Karachi chased down 235. And Ben, he was suitably rewarded for his work as well.
Yep. He was awarded the Dorlance Reliable Player of the Match award back in the team dressing room, for which he was given a Dorlance hairdryer. So there's a good video of the team, manager or whatever, holding this hairdryer in a box as Vince sort of sheepishly walks up, gets given it, shake of hands, everyone in the dressing room shouting, Vincey, Vincey. And then...
But what happens if you're a baldy? So they must have some
other appliances.
Reserve appliances, a bit like Bullseye style,
you can...
Is your speedboat.
Yeah.
Or maybe the hairdryer companies are looking to expand their horizons a little bit and really, it might be a good marketing tool to get a good, a baldy on. Because actually it's just really fun to have a hairdryer just blowing in your face, and you just buy it for that.
Wouldn't you be slightly insulted if you'd won, say, ECB Podcast of the Year or something like that, and you were given a hairdryer by Daggers?
I would find it funny. I would not be insulted by that. If you're listening, ECB, if we win it next year, I would accept a hairdryer.
They don't listen.
Ben, Usman Tariq. 2 elbows. Explain that one.
Well, I mean,
3 elbows.
In a way, we've all got 2 elbows. Yeah, not all. But
I thought it sounded like a nickname.
All of us going on here. Yeah, so he's a spinner in the Pakistan Super League. He bowls sort of baseball style in that he basically stops completely when he gets to the crease.
And he throws it.
And then he it looks like he throws it, and that's what the umpires think as well, because he was reported last year, then cleared, reported again this year, still allowed to keep bowling. There's an interview where he explains what's going on, and he says I've got 2 elbows, basically, 2 elbows and 1 arm, and that's what.
That's the key distinction, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. I've got 2 elbows, so I can chuck it.
So where's the second one?
Yeah, well, he doesn't. He does the whole interview arms folded, and when it's folded as you or I would fold an arm. There's not sort of an extra fold
There's
that
not
means it's got an
yeah.
arm going up on the shoulder or something that is going sort of 3 ways around. So yeah, we're not sure. We'll try and find out where Usman Tariq's third elbow is by next week, I think.
2 Spanish archers in 1 arm. Remarkable.
And Ben, the West Indies first class competition final was one to remember.
Yeah, well, so Guyana won it, but were penalised twice for ball tampering during as the game as it unfolded. But still won the whole thing. So cheating works, kids. That's the rule.
Any statements from prime ministers yet?
Not from prime ministers, but the CWI president did put out a statement sort of congratulating them, but also with a kind of like, but come on now, basically.
What sort of ball tampering was it? Do we know?
Good question. I don't think we do know. I haven't seen sort of footage out there. It was kind of umpire spotting a ball that looked as it shouldn't. So I guess, yeah, I don't. That would be good to find out if it was sort of a really.
Let's go with the
thing.
Afridi Golden Delicious apple style. Let's go with that now.
Is that your favourite one? I had a soft spot for Faf du Plessis using the zip on his trousers.
Yeah, classy, cunning. Yeah, Af's betrayed his inexperience as a leader. Just picking soil up.
Sprinkling dirt on it as well. I never understood it, because what is that? Like, rub it on some dirt maybe, but sprinkling it on anyway. Yeah.
Excellent. That is everything for today's show. A slightly different show to usual. Next week's the big one.
What was different about it?
Well,
it's exactly the same as all the other ones.
No, not necessarily. I think we spent longer on stuff we normally don't spend that long on.
Not every show includes the phrase audacity of altruism, I would say.
Yeah. You literally wrote a charter on the tube between Brixton and here. We don't do that on most shows.
Yeah.
And if we do, I think we're in trouble.
We're in uncharted territory, yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Well, next week is the return to common sense in the release of the Wisden Almanac 2025. You will hear who the 5 Wisden cricketers of the year are. We'll have Wisden editor Lawrence Booth on the show with us for that one. See you next time.